Hello, and welcome to Kriya Yoga Online. My name is Ryan Kurzak. I'm a meditation teacher and a Vedic astrologer. I've been practicing and studying the techniques of Kriya Yoga for the last 15 years and teaching for the last 10. On this channel, if you're not familiar with it already, there's plenty of lectures, free talks on Kriya Yoga, spirituality, and meditation. If you're interested in learning the Kriya Yoga techniques as taught through the lineage of Paramahansa Yogananda, those are available on here as well. Just scroll through the videos and you'll find them. Be sure to watch them all, particularly the ones that deal with the preliminary techniques, initiation, the Kriya Pranayama techniques, as well as when not to practice Kriya Pranayama. You want to make sure you have all of that under your belt before you begin. Today, we're going to talk about how to be a good Kriya Yogi like Paramahansa Yogananda, how to realize what he realized, to live a life as he lived his life. Because he is a good example of spiritual realization within our modern world. And to begin, you have to be sincere about why you are approaching the spiritual path, why you are approaching the path to Kriya Yoga. Are you approaching it to know what you are, yourself, your connection to the divine infinite consciousness? Are you approaching it to escape from problems or to escape from painful situations within your life? Are you doing it because you think it's going to make you a better person? Do you think it's going to transform the world? These are all things that you need to be aware of in regards to your motivation. And the clearest desire is that to simply know what you are, beyond name, form, know what you are as a unique expression of this divine infinite consciousness within the world. Know what you are in regards to how to properly serve your role, play your part within the world. If you're approaching Kriya Yoga for that reason, that's one of the more sattvic reasons, or clearer reasons, to begin the practice. If you're approaching it because you're in pain, or you want to improve yourself, or you want to improve the world, that's okay too. Eventually that will fall away, because those are considered to be tamasic and rajasic reasons to practice. Tamasic reasons are to escape from pain. Rajasic reasons are to make yourself better, think that you can be better than what you are. And really, as you practice Kriya Yoga, you start to realize that the world is set up in a very intelligent, holistic way, and that there really is no better or worse, but there are different grades of clarity, wisdom, and capacity to be in tune with the wholeness of life all around you. And that's what we're aiming for. Now, Yogananda was a very focused, singular person. He had a desire to know God, usually through the Divine Mother. That's how he expressed it. He had a desire to wake up fully and completely within this lifetime. And he made choices that supported that. Meaning, he might have been interested in other things, but he was always able to redirect his awareness back to what was of primary importance. And that is meditating every day, meditating to a state of clarity, meditating to a state of peace, being of service to the world with his own unique skills and talents, doing his best to surrender to this wholeness of life, God, divine consciousness, however you want to think of it. And that was his primary direction, his primary focus, which we can be aware of when we read his books, such as Autobiography of a Yogi and so on. But we can all do this in our daily lives, and this is what's most important. Because the mistake that a lot of people make is when they try to become more spiritual or understand spiritual topics or gain more clarity or wisdom, they try to imitate people that came before. And what they end up doing is simply imitating their personality, not following the steps that they followed. What do I mean by that? Well, it's easy to go wear orange robes and take on an Indian name and act all pious and holy and pretend to play the part of what we imagine a spiritual person should be like. But if that's not your role in the world, then essentially you are short-circuiting your path to clarity. Because in a way, what that's saying is that that is the only valid way to live life. And so anyone else who's choosing to live life differently, or who has a different path, or thinks about things differently, it kind of invalidates who they are. And what we have to remember is the clearer you get, you start to see that everyone and everything is valuable, is a valuable expression of this divine infinite consciousness. So to this end, I want to encourage you not to try to act like Paramahansa Yogananda. Don't try to be like any of the saints and the sages that you idolize, but figure out what did they do that allowed them to experience clarity. And it has nothing to do with their personality. It has nothing to do with the role they played. They had the role. Paramahansa Yogananda had the role to start an organization, to bring the message of yoga to the West. That was his role. And that's why we're able to talk about it today. But there are plenty of awake, enlightened individuals who you never even know about, who their mothers, their fathers, they are business people, they are musicians, they are doctors, they are gardeners, and you never know it. Why? Because they're focused on what's important, which is the path to realization that requires that you meditate every day, that you study spiritual literature to inspire your mind, that you do your best to maintain a clear state of consciousness even when you're not meditating. They take care of their body as best they can, their divine temple, and they do their best to be authentic in the world, an authentic expression of the divine consciousness. Because if you think about it, how could this world really exist if everyone was trying to be like Yogananda, if everyone was trying to be a spiritual teacher or a guru or whatever it might be? Well, very little would get done. So everyone has their role to play. And what we have to realize is that you can wake up completely and totally as you are, playing your unique role within the world. And so how do you do that? Well, you accept that you have a purpose. You learn to develop your skills in meditation. You learn to develop your devotion to life, to your spiritual path, because your life is your spiritual path. It's not just when you sit down and meditate, or it's not just when you practice hatha yoga or think positive thoughts for people. Your entire life is your spiritual path. And to become skillful at meditation requires dedication. It requires time, and it requires a subtle intelligence to be able to be aware of what you're doing when you're doing it. Too often people become mechanically involved in the meditation process. They'll be initiated, they'll learn a meditation technique, and they'll assume that if they just go through this whole process mechanically, that within a few years they'll be much clearer, much more awake, much more enlightened. And then a few years go by and they scratch their head and wonder, well, why is that not the case? Well, it's because they were doing it mechanically. Now that mechanical repetition of meditation, of prayer, can help to calm the nervous system, strengthen the body, make you more calm internally. But the transformational part of the whole process is engaging the silence after you've gone through the pranayama routines or the Kriya Yoga techniques. So we need to learn to make our practice more dynamic. But your first goal, your first step, is to learn effective meditation techniques, practice them every day for at least 20 to 30 minutes. And then as you become more proficient and more skillful, you can increase that time, or you can do it twice a day. Now, how do you know when you're doing meditation well? Well, it's when you can sit down quietly, internalize your awareness, and exist in a peaceful state. After you practice a meditation routine, you want to sit in that silence. That's the transformational aspect of the whole process. And so essentially what you're doing to become more skillful is you're learning to extend that silence, to make it longer, to make it deeper, to make it more satisfying. Because that is where the actual transformation occurs within the Kriya techniques, within any meditation technique, really. So you have to be skillful, and you also have to be devoted to the process. And what does that mean? Well, when you're devoted to something, you continue with the process even when difficulties arise. And when you're learning anything, difficulties will arise. When you're learning a new skill or a musical instrument or learning how to run a business, you're going to hit bumps on the road. And you're going to want to say, I don't want to do this anymore. But if you're devoted to it, you say, but that's okay. I'm going to continue. I'm going to figure out how I can learn from this. So your devotion doesn't necessarily mean that you're all enraptured and engulfed in the bliss of divine union all the time. Devotion, real devotion, is being able to stay the course. When you're devoted to a person and they have a problem or a difficulty, you don't say, oh, well, I'm out of here. Sorry, you've got a problem now. You say, no, I'm your friend or I'm your spouse and I am devoted to you and I will walk with you through this. The same is true of your spiritual practice. You have to think over the long term, and that is how you develop your devotion. And this devotion is a lot more effective than trying to pretend to be in a divine blissful state all the time. That state comes over time, and it arrives subtly, meaning that if you are paying attention over a 10-year cycle, 10-year period, you'll become a little more peaceful with each month, with each year. And after 10 years, there will be a gigantic difference between who you were 10 years ago and who you are now. You don't want to get caught up in the idea that you're going to have a spontaneous enlightenment experience where everything's going to change. It doesn't work that way. I hate to break it to you, but it doesn't work that way. Why? Because you have karma that you need to work through. You have to figure things out. You have to grow into it. It would be very similar comparison that if you were a baby and all of a sudden you become a 21-year-old adult. Well, that's not going to happen. And number one, if it did happen, you don't want that to happen because it's the time between when you're a child and when you grow into adulthood that you learn certain things. Your body changes, your mind matures, your emotional body changes, your astral body changes. So we need to look at this in a very realistic way. This is why, number one, you have to develop skill. Number two, you have to develop devotion and also patience with the practice. Now, for skill, you can learn from a teacher. No problem. That's an excellent way to do it. Learn from a teacher who knows what they're talking about. So that's a little harder to find. But if you can find one, fantastic. There are books. There are videos and lectures on this YouTube channel. There are plenty of lectures that go over the pranayama techniques and also ways of accessing higher states of consciousness and being realistic about the process. 2 books I've written, Kriya Yoga, Continuing the Lineage of Enlightenment, and A Course in Tranquility. They are all based on my experiences of what I've learned to be most effective while engaging this process and looking at it over the long term. I'm also working on a 3rd book, which will encompass and describe the Kriya Yoga processes, as well as some of the advanced processes that you learn after your initial initiation. That's not the emphasis of the book, but I know that a lot of people would like to know these things, so we'll be sharing them there. So you have some opportunities to learn. And it's simpler than what you think. A lot of people, when they learn, they expect something mind-boggling to occur. And sometimes that happens. But usually you're learning a particular technique, such as the Kriya Pranayama, or chanting through the chakras. And then it requires you to spend time and attention developing your capacity to focus on that technique, to really internalize your awareness and internalize your attention through that technique. These are the stages of yoga. In Kriya Yoga, Continuing the Lineage of Enlightenment, there's a commentary on the Yoga Sutras, which are very key to understanding Kriya Yoga process. And that process builds in stages with the yamas and the niyamas, learning to be an authentic, good, wholesome person. It moves on to making the body healthy through things like hatha yoga, the postures, and then pranayama, cleansing the emotional body and the nervous system, to pratyahara, learning to internalize your awareness. And you have to follow these things in stages, because once you get to the capacity to internalize your awareness, then that's when the real work begins. So everything that you've done up until then is really kind of posturing to kind of align your body and set the foundation so that you can access higher states of consciousness. And these higher states of consciousness will not be things that you can talk about with other people. They will not be things that you want to even discuss with other people, because they are specific to you as a unique expression of the divine infinite consciousness. And we have to remember that. Because the experiences you have will not be the same as Yogananda's, or Lahiri Mahasaya, or Sri Yukteswar, or anyone else for that matter. Because even in the Bhagavad Gita, when Supreme Consciousness reveals himself to the seeker, Krishna reveals himself to Arjuna, he specifically states, only you will be able to see me in this way, because it is a specific revelation to that individualized aspect of divine consciousness. So you have to keep in mind that you don't want to be like Yogananda in the sense of his personality, in the sense of trying to act like him, live like him, be like him. That was his life. That was his unique expression of divine infinite consciousness. You live your life. You be authentic to yourself. Maybe you have foul language. Maybe you have some habits not everyone appreciates. Maybe you wrestle with normal human emotions or normal human situations. That's perfectly all right. That's part of your own personal path. And the more that you try to invalidate that and push that away, the less quickly you will be able to wake up. Because remember, the whole process isn't about becoming our ideal personality. The whole process is about knowing what we are and expressing our unique, individualized aspect of divine consciousness into this world. The divine consciousness is the entire world. We are a unique aspect of it. We are, in a sense, a reference point. And the clearer you get, you are able to experience this. So you know you have a personality, but you're no longer confined by it. You no longer think that you are the only important person in the world. You do actually see that by being the way you act towards other people is the way you act towards yourself. And when people act towards you in certain ways, it's only you treating yourself in that way. So you start to see yourself as everything. And that's not something that you can really get mentally. You have to directly experience it. You have to directly contemplate it. And it is the meditation techniques, the skill and devotion we develop that allows us to have this capacity. And this is something that will be talked about in this second Kriya Yoga book I'm writing, because too often people put attention on the techniques and they don't realize that then after the techniques there is inner work to be done. There is contemplation to be done. So we will address that, and that book may come out ideally spring of 2016. So stay tuned to this channel, watch for it, because it is my goal and my intention through that particular work to outline the foundational principles, much of what we have discussed on this Kriya Yoga channel already, but also to take it a little deeper into the actual inner work that you have to do. When Yogananda secluded himself for 2 hours every morning, he wasn't just cranking through Kriya Pranayamas. He was doing inner work. He was working with his consciousness, which not only benefited him, but also benefited all those people that were around him, because he was a part of their consciousness, just like he is a part of yours, and you are a part of his. We're all part of this one consciousness. So this is very important, and the foundation you need now is to develop skill in meditation, devotion to the process, and patience, and also being authentically yourself, instead of trying to attain some fantastic ideal. Now, within this process, you also have to learn to surrender. This is spoken of in the Yoga Sutras. They say, surrender to your eternal self or surrender to Ishvara. But really, what you are doing is surrendering to the mystery. We want to know God. We want to know what we are. We want to know divine consciousness. We want to know all these things. We want to have these experiences that we think are going to shatter our world and blow our mind. When really, what we're working towards is that capacity to be okay not having to define everything, not having to know everything, to trust that there is an infinite intelligence sustaining this whole experience through time and space, and that even when we're not in this body anymore, that infinite intelligence still keeps going, and we are still aware, we are still a part of it. And that creates the sense of awe, the sense of divine mystery. So the more you practice, you realize the less you know about anything, really. And that is where that bliss and that overwhelming sense of joy comes from, because you don't have to know anything. It's taken care of for you. And this is why I think in the Bible and other spiritual texts, when they mention God-fearing or having the fear of God, I think it's a mistranslation. I don't think they mean that. I think it means the awe of the immensity of what we are and what's going on all around us. And it is our spiritual practices and our devotion which allows us to let go of our need to define everything and know everything and have everything planned out for us. That capacity to surrender. So start to contemplate that. How can you surrender more? And that doesn't mean that you give up. That doesn't mean that you don't still try to be skillful within your life or do your best. It just means that you do your best and then you surrender. You can't control everything. You learn that control is not something that you have. Again, in the Gita, they say that you are not the doer, that God is the doer of what we experience. But we have the desire, the need to work, to act, but we don't have the right to control what happens after we act. That's up to God, divine consciousness, however you want to consider it or think of it. And that's where this joy, this bliss comes from. That's something you have to work on. You have to contemplate, how can I do this? How can I move into that state? And really think about it. And try to exist clear, calm, surrendered. Even if it's just a few minutes a day. In time, that increases with your meditation practice, that increases. The more authentic you are with your own personal life path, that increases. Now, one of the final things to consider is that with this whole process, you are developing a relationship with yourself. One of the things I talk about in the book, A Course in Tranquility, is that you are the wholeness of life and that you do have insights and wisdom and clarity. And everything that you experience, it is you. So essentially you're growing into the rest of you. When you get an insight, when you know something that you can't know because you don't have the concrete information, where is that coming from? When you connect with someone and they call you at that moment, where is that coming from? When you have insights or breakthroughs or aha moments, where is that coming from? How is it that you are able to breathe, that your heart beats, that you are able to exist in this vast and complex infinite consciousness without you controlling it? Well, there is the rest of you, the higher mind, which is still you, taking care of everything. And so essentially what you're doing is you're learning to grow into yourself, the bigger you, but you're also learning to have a relationship with yourself, a relationship with your higher consciousness. When people pray and they pray to God or an angel or to divine consciousness, well, they're just praying to themselves, but that's the way that they're able to access the information. So if you have an aspect of divine consciousness or God and you pray to it and you try to commune with it, well, you're communing with yourself, you're developing that relationship. And in time, you eventually let those things go. You don't see God as a bearded man in the sky, or you don't think that you have to go through a lineage of old men who are part of your tradition to have direct insights. You're able to realize that that's accessible to you right now. In the Yoga Sutras, it talks about that by attuning to Om, contemplating Om, listening to the vibration of Om, that through this is how the ancients learned, the ancient teachers learned. And so it's there now, you can access it directly. And again, there are videos on this channel that speak to the Om vibration and the Om technique, so you can do some research on that. The point is that don't look at this whole process as an escape from what's going on around you and within you. Look at it as though you're developing a relationship with it, both the light and the dark side of yourself, both those things that you love and those things that you don't like, those people that you don't know, all the situations that you experience, all your internal emotional states, your mental states. You're learning to grow into those, to explore those, to understand how those are an aspect of yourself. And you make them conscious. And when you do that, you are developing a relationship with yourself. And you realize then that you are completely and utterly and totally alone. But not in the way that we typically think. We are completely and utterly, totally alone in the sense that we are all one. So there is no one else. And those of you who are interested in non-dualism, well, Kriya Yoga practice, any kind of spiritual practice that kind of follows these same fundamentals, leads to that state of oneness, non-dualism. And it does take skill, surrender, and patience to develop that realization because we're growing into it. So I don't encourage people to just be here now. because you're just going to be here now in your pile of crap, basically, assuming you're in a pile of crap. I encourage people to master their consciousness, to grow into and become aware of all the different aspects of themselves, to wake up to it. Then they can be here now consciously. Then they can be here now in a completely, utterly awake state. And it is the techniques that allow you to do that, and the principles and the philosophy that kind of guide your way, guide the course. Just like when you're trying to sculpt a bonsai tree, you need a little bit of guidance, some wire here and a wire here to get it to grow in the way you want. But once that's done, you can take it off. So you don't want to abandon a process. That process will get you a lot further, quicker, a lot more realized and at peace. It will ripen you much more rapidly than just waiting around for it to happen. Sure, if you wait around for it to happen, it will eventually, but why waste your time? That's like me saying, well, maybe I want to play guitar. Well, I could wait around a few years until I eventually play it, or I can make a schedule and say, I'm going to practice 15 minutes every day. Or I want to build a business. I can say, I'm going to wait until I have that successful business. Or I can start researching how to have a business and start taking steps towards it. And who do you think is going to realize the result, the experience quicker? But that person who is doing it incrementally, a little at a time, devoting their life to it, versus that person who's waiting around for it to fall into their lap. Sure, it eventually may fall into your lap, but it's up to you if you want to wait or not. So with these things, we need to keep in mind that to be like Yogananda, to be as he really was, not his personality, not how we look at him, but to be what he really was internally, to know that state internally, you have to be very sincere in your desire. You have to develop your skill in meditation and yoga practice. And when I speak of yoga practice, I don't mean hatha yoga of the postures, and I don't mean just meditation. I mean your entire life. And the Yoga Sutras specifically speak to the entirety of yoga practice. You need to develop devotion to stay with it, to be patient, to be committed, to endure the times where you feel completely dry, like there's nothing going right in your world, spiritually speaking. And enjoy those times when you're riding the waves of more clarity and sticking with it. You don't want to imitate another person. You don't want to try to be like them, act like them, talk like them. You just want to know what are the things that they did that allowed them to know this state of clarity and apply that to your own personal life. You want to learn to be surrendered into the mystery of what's all around you. And sometimes that can be just sitting out in nature. Or after you meditate, just observe how amazing it is that you're even here, breathing. That lamp even exists. These sorts of things. And ultimately, you want to realize that you are developing a relationship with yourself. You're developing a relationship with yourself. And that might start with an idea of God, divine consciousness in your mind. Maybe it's Divine Mother, as it was for Yogananda, but he eventually outgrew that too. When he was older, my teacher told me that he was very much of the mind that he had a more absolute view. So he wasn't necessarily caught up in these images of Divine Mother anymore. He was more of an absolutist, I guess you could say, if that's even a thing. But if you need a connection to the Buddha, to Jesus, to an angel, to Divine Mother, to Shiva, to Hanuman, whatever it might be, that's okay, because that is still carrying your intention, and that is still helping you develop that relationship. And then when you need to outgrow that, when you need to let go of that image, you will. But you don't want to force it. You don't want to force it. You don't want to try to tell a 5-year-old that Santa Claus isn't real. And that's an exaggeration. Maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe you don't want them to believe in things like that. But little things that you believe in when you're a child, you eventually let go of as you grow up. So the same thing happens with your spiritual practice. So don't give up your necessary means of concentration, focus, and devotion too soon. But do be open to growing beyond them, to going beyond the definitions and the concepts to what is real, which cannot be spoken about, cannot be drawn, cannot be made into an image. It's simply what is perfectly apparent right now, always. So keep this in mind as you move forward with your spiritual work. Don't hesitate to review the videos on this channel. I have been doing a monthly practice Right now I believe we're up to May. This is 2015, but I'm going to do it for another, up through the rest of 2015 through December. The books Kriya Yoga, Continuing the Lineage of Enlightenment, and A Course in Tranquility. If you get those books, take your time with them, read them slowly, contemplate them, and see how you can apply them to your life. And this will help you to fully embrace the path of Kriya Yoga. So be well, and thank you very much for tuning in.